papawi ang inyong pangangalaga sa amin. Kami po ay lumalapit sa inyo ngayon na may pusong puno ng kababaang loob. Nawa ay igawad mo po sa amin ang iyong banal na patnubay at karunungan. Bilang mga halal na opisyal na pinagkatiwalaang maglingkod sa aming bansa at sa mamamayang Pilipino, dalangin namin ang sagrado mong presensya sa aming araw-araw na pagganap sa aming tungkulin. Panginoon, sa pagpasok muli ng panahon ng tagulan, hinihiling namin ang iyong pagkandili lalo na sa mga bahagi ng aming bansa na patuloy na humaharap sa matinding suliraning dulot ng kalamidad. Itinataas po namin sa inyo, aming Diyos Ama, ang aming mga kababayan na naapektuhan ng mga nagdaang bagyo at pagbaha. Yakapin mo po ang mga naging biktima ng nagdaang habagat at bagyong Karina upang madama nila ang pag-asa tungo sa muling pagbangon mula sa dagok na ito. Ilayo mo po kami sa mapinsalang bunga ng mga natural na kalamidad. Gawaran mo po sana kami ng kahandaan upang maharap namin ang mga ito na walang masasayang na buhay, infrastruktura, pinaghirapang mga ari-arian o hanap buhay ng ating mga kababayan. Naniniwala po kaming walang imposible sa inyong ngalan, Panginoon. Ang inyo pong proteksyon at gabay ang aming inspirasyon upang makagawa ng mga hakbang na makakabawas at magbibigay solusyon sa epekto ng mga kalamidad. Heavenly Father, we lift up everything to you as we trust in your infinite wisdom and compassion. Ikaw, Ama naming makapangyarihan sa lahat, ang aming pag-asa at paghinga. Panatag kaming tahakin ng bukas sapagkat tiyak naming nasa inyong mga kamay ang aming liwanag at kaligtasan. Alam naming ikaw ang aming kalma sa gitna ng anumang kapahamakan at mas matibay ang aming pananampalataya sa iyo, Panginoon, kaysa anumang uri ng unos o banta sa aming kaligtasan. Naway inyo pong dinggin ang aming samot hiling sa inyong banal na pangalan. Amen.
Amen. Secretary General, may please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Zubiri, the Senate President.
With 23 senators present, Chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the indulgence of the body, Mr. President, before we proceed with the reference of business, would like to acknowledge some guests present in the gallery today. The Honorable Mayor of Iriga City, Mayor Wilfredo Olivia, Mayor Ramon Orfonel of Catanawan, Quezon, Mayor Victomar Bonol of Lamot, Ifugao, all guests of this representation. Likewise, Mr. President, we have several barangay officials from Malolos, Bulacan, led by Barangay Captain Vener de la Cruz, together with all the SK Kagawads. Mr. President, likewise, we have some officials from Paway, Ilocos Norte, headed by Barangay Captain Stanislao Bagayas, all guests of Senator Legarda, Naimbag nga Malem. We have several law students from the University of Santo Tomas, College of from the Tomas Claudio College of Morong Rizal, all first-year law students of Rizal Province, guests of the Philippine Senate.
Chair would like to acknowledge our guests from the provinces of Rizal, Ilocos Norte, Bulacan, Ifugao, Quezon, and Camarines Sur. In behalf of your senators, welcome to the Philippine Senate. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
Messages of the President of the Philippines. Letter of President Ferdinand R. Marcos dated 13 May 2024 submitting for the Senate's consideration and concurrence the free trade agreement between the Government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Government of the Republic of Korea, which was signed on September 7, 2023 in Jakarta, Indonesia.
The Committee on Foreign Relations.
Letter of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. dated June 4, 2024, submitting for the Senate's consideration and concurrence the protocol to amend the Convention on Offenses and certain other acts committed on board aircraft, which was adopted on April 4, 2014 in Montreal, Canada.
The Committee on Foreign Relations.
Letter of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. dated June 4, 2024, submitting for the Senate's consideration and concurrence the United Nations Convention on International Liability for Damage Caused by Space Objects Liability Convention, which was signed by the Philippines on August 22, 1972.
The Committee on Foreign Relations.
Letter of President Marcos Jr. dated June 18, 2024, submitting for the Senate's consideration and concurrence the agreement under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, which was signed by the Philippines on September 2023.
The Committee on Rules. Committee on Foreign Relations, rather.
Letters from the Office of the President dated 3 and 5 June 2024, returning the 7 enrolled copies of Senate Bill 2449, House Bill 8327, titled An Act Providing for Organizational Reforms in the Philippine National Police, amending for the purpose RA number 6975, otherwise known as the Department of Interior and Local Government Act of 1990 as amended, and Republic Act number 8551, otherwise known as the Philippine National Police Reform and Reorganizational Act of 1998.
To the Committee on Rules.
Letter of President Ferdinand Marcos dated July 5, 2024, returning without his signature and vetoing the enrolled Senate Bill number 2449, House Bill number 8327, titled An Act Providing for Organizational Reforms in the Philippine National Police, amending for the purpose RA 6975, otherwise known as the Department of Interior and Local Government Act of 1990 as amended, and RA 8551, otherwise known as the Philippine National Police Reform and Reorganizational Act of 1998, pursuant to Section 27, 1, Article 6 of the 1987 Constitution.
To the Committee on Rules.
Bills on first reading. Senate Bill number 2719, an act exempting the Bureau of Internal Revenue from the coverage of RA number 6758, otherwise known as the Compensation and Position Classification Act of 1989, as amended by Senator Angara.
To the Committees on Ways and Means, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, Professional Regulation, and Finance.
2720, an act providing for a Magna Carta for students and for other purposes by Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Basic Education, Higher Technical Vocational Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
2721, an act mandating the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority to design and implement technical vocational education and training and livelihood programs specifically for rehabilitated drug dependents and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Tulfo.
To the Committees on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, and Finance.
2722, an act encouraging corporate social responsibility, providing incentives therefore by Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
2723, an act prohibiting the development, production, stockpiling, and use of chemical weapons, providing for their destruction and imposing penalties for violations therefore by Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation.
2724, an act strengthening the rights of patients against hospital detention on the ground of non-payment of hospital bills and medical expenses, and providing stiffer penalties for violation therefore, amending for the purpose RA number 9439, otherwise known as an act prohibiting the detention of patients in hospital and medical clinics on grounds of non-payment of hospital bills for medical expenses by Senator Estrada.
To the Committees on Health and Demography and Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development.
2725, an act providing for a national anti-doping policy in sports, establishing for the purpose the Philippine National Anti-Doping Organization, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Estrada.
To the Committees on Sports and Finance.
2726, an act lowering the percentage requirement for the voluntary dissolution of condominium corporations for condemned projects and projects in existence for more than 30 years, amending for the purpose RA 4726, otherwise known as the Condominium Act by Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement.
2727, an act providing for a Magna Carta of commuters by Senator Estrada.
To the Committees on Public Services and Finance.
2728, an act expanding the coverage of the National Feeding Program to include secondary schools, amending for the purpose RA number 11037 or the Masustansyang Pagkain para sa Batang Pilipino Act by Senator Estrada.
To the Committees on Basic Education and Youth.
2729, an act amending RA number 11900 entitled An Act Regulating the Importation, Manufacture, Sale, Packaging, Distribution, Use, and Communication of Vaporized Nicotine and Non-Nicotine Products and Novel Tobacco Products by Senator Padilla.
To the Committees on Health and Demography and Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
2730, an act defining and prohibiting political dynasties, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes by Senator Padilla.
To the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Laws.
2731, an act further strengthening the incentives for private sector participation in public educational institutions by amending certain provisions in RA number 8525, otherwise known as the Adapa School Act of 1998, by Senator Sangara and Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Basic Education, Higher Technical Vocational Education and Ways and Means.
2732, an act strengthening the legal staff of the Department of Justice, renaming it as the Office of the Chief State Counsel, redefining, expanding, rationalizing, and further professionalizing its organization, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Tolentino.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Civil Service, Government Organization and Professional Regulation and Finance.
Resolutions. Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 21, concurrent resolution urging the President to create a cabinet cluster for education to ensure the cohesive and coherent implementation of education laws, policies, reforms, and regulations among the departments, bureaus, commissions, and offices in the executive branch of the government, and formulate a long-term integrated national education and workforce development plan, introduced by Senators Gatchalian, Cayetano, AP, Pimentel III, and Villanueva.
To the Committee on Rules.
Resolution number 1063, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Information and Mass Media to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the construction of the new Senate building by Senator Padilla.
To the Committee on Accounts.
1064, resolution directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to review and reassess the 35 pesos wage increase in the National Capital Region and to further review existing policies and procedures on minimum wage increases with the end in view of passing legislative measures aimed at improving the quality of life of Filipino workers by Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development.
1065, resolution urging the adoption and expanded PhilHealth coverage of automated peritoneal dialysis to improve the quality of life for chronic kidney disease patients by Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Health and Demography.
1066, resolution urging the Department of Health to foster and strengthen international collaboration with foreign health ministries and organizations with the end in view of harnessing expertise, expanding research and development in the use of medical cannabis as a form of treatment by Senator Padilla.
To the Committee on Health and Demography.
1067, resolution urging the Department of Education, National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and the National Historical Commission of the Philippines to formulate an enhanced resolve program to be integrated in the basic education curriculum by Senator Padilla.
To the Committee on Basic Education.
1068, resolution expressing the sense of the Senate and recognizing the strong friendship and cooperation between the Republic of the Philippines and the Czech Republic and commemorating the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two nations by Senator Padilla.
To the Committee on Rules.
1069, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Services to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the long passenger lines in international and domestic airports and to review and evaluate the operations of the Manila International Airport Authority by Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Communication, letter from the Government Service Insurance System submitting to the Senate the report on the GSIS investment portfolio as of December 31, 2023 in compliance with Section 36 of RA 8291 of the GSIS Act of 1997.
To the Committee on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, point of information, if
Senator Cayetano is seeking the floor, Mr. President.
Senator Cayetano is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
thank you. Mr. President, this is just a point of information for the body. Today, the Supreme Court has ruled that the FDA has authority over tobacco products. It has denied the motion for reconsideration of the Philippine Tobacco Institute and has ruled with finality that the FDA has regulatory powers over the health aspect of tobacco products. I bring this up today, Mr. President, because time and again, this august body has had to make very difficult decisions, has passed laws regulating the tobacco industry. And sadly, one of the major laws that we have passed in the last Congress was in favor of the tobacco industry. That law gave the power to regulate the vape products, which are tobacco products, to the Department of Trade and Industry. And today, the Blue Ribbon Committee, which I chair, is hearing the monumental, catastrophic, embarrassing spectacle that the Philippine government presented itself in an international body wherein they lobbied for the tobacco, they supported the tobacco cause in a health forum, a WHO health forum. That is pending in the Blue Ribbon Committee. As we go about our day-to-day work on the internet, are products that are targeting the youth. They are tobacco products in a different form. They are now encased in plastic. They are now emitting what is called vapors instead of smoke. But they're equally harmful, Mr. President. And this body, in the last Congress, gave the authority to DTI. That to this day, if you look at the jurisdiction of DTI, has absolutely no power, no expertise in the health field, and yet they are given the power to regulate these products. So I bring this up, my dear colleagues, because with finality, the Supreme Court has ruled that there is no, that it is the FDA that has jurisdiction over tobacco products. A very brief history, dear colleagues. In 2008, I sponsored the FDA bill. In 2009, it became a law. Around 2011, the FDA issued regulations regulating the tobacco industry, and Philip Morris refused to be under the jurisdiction of the tobacco industry, and they filed the case in the lower court, and this went all the way up to the Supreme Court. It's been a battle for 15 years. If you count the time that we passed the law, 15 years, they delayed the implementation of the law. The argument being, shampoo, regulated kayo ng FDA. Toothpaste, regulated ng FDA. Perfume, regulated ng FDA. Lysol, regulated ng FDA. Ano pa? Pero tobacco, hindi. They're in a class of their own, according to the tobacco industry. They do not need the regulation of the Food and Drug Authority. 15 years since we passed the law. Ang dami ko ng colleague dito na namatay. Since then, the late Senator Flavier, the man behind, ano yun, Yossi Kadire, he's gone. My seatmate, the father of our minority floor leader, the late Senator Nene Pimentel, was very supportive of this measure, Mr. President. He's gone. The father of our colleague, Senator Angara, also supported us on this anti-tobacco campaign. He's gone. They're all gone. So it's on us, dear colleagues, to ensure the health of the Filipino people. That is all, Mr. President. I just hope that in the days, in the weeks, and the months to come, I will have your support when the Blue Ribbon Committee submits its committee report, which will also include recommendation of laws that will help regulate a disease that can be prevented if we promote health in its truest form, if we do not allow tobacco lobbies to dictate upon us. Thank you, Mr. President.
The point of information of the lady is well taken, are duly noted and hereby entered into the records.
Mr. President.
Yes, what is the pleasure of the Honorable Villanueva?
Yes, Mr. President, just a very short manifestation in support, if I may, Mr. President.
The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate and thank our dear colleague, no other than Senator Pia Cayetano, who has been consistent, not only for the past 2-3 years, but for the past 2 decades, Mr. President. And I was one of her supporters, Mr. President, in asking the body, even during the time when we were deliberating on this particular law, I was also in support that FDA should be on top of things and it should be the one to regulate tobacco products. Mr. President, I'm very happy to hear the news, this Supreme Court decision, and with finality, and also would like to emphasize the complex and dangerous process of nicotine addiction, which is a health issue and should really be under the jurisdiction of FDA and DOH. Mr. President, additional information lang po, in June 2024, DOH confirmed the first recorded death due to e-cigarette or vaping use associated with lung injury. The victim is a 22-year-old Filipino male with no previous health issues. Per Lung Center of the Philippines, as of 2022, we have a daily average death of 321 due to tobacco-related diseases. Tobacco kills more than 8 million people worldwide every year. And that's why it matters, Mr. President, all the time to listen to experts. And I'm glad that Senator Pia Cayetano would always be here to provide us important information, especially in making right decisions. And so we congratulate her, and we hope that we all learn our lessons as a body. Thank you, Mr. President.
The remarks of the gentleman are likewise well taken and duly noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2665 under Committee Report 251. This is the bill on the Philippine Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act. And Mr. President, the parliamentary status is that we are now in the period of interpellation.
There is a motion. Hearing no objection, the motion is hereby approved. Secretary General is directed to read the title only of the measure. The motion having been approved, Chair now recognizes Senator Tolentino, the sponsor of the measure, and to interpolate the gentleman, Senator Aquilino Pimentel, to interpolate. Senator Tolentino has the floor. You may proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of our hardworking majority leader and sponsor of this complex piece of legislation, Mr. President, if I can, if this representation can commence with this interpellation just to get more details and pursuant actually, Mr. President, to the spirit of what the President of the Republic said in the SONA, that we should propagate knowledge and information about our maritime interests and maritime zones, and even pass this to the next generations. That is what I got from the SONA, Mr. President. So, in that spirit, Mr. President, may we commence with our interpellation.
Yes, Mr. President, I am at the disposal of the distinguished minority leader and I am prepared to respond to his questions.
Mr. President, this measure is about the establishment of so-called archipelagic sea lanes in the Philippines. May I know, Mr. President, if we are doing this pursuant to a treaty because it is the enactment of a domestic law of this kind is imposed as an obligation under a treaty?
Mr. President, the good gentleman is correct. Indeed, there is a treaty, and that is the United Nations Law of the Sea. But, Mr. President, our obligation here is not mandatory. It is discretionary because the Law of the Sea, specifically Article 53, mentions, in Section 12, mentions the word may, that a country may designate an archipelagic sea lane, Mr. President.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is discretionary upon the state party to UNCLOS, and because of this bill, ibig sabihin nun that we want to exercise our discretion by enacting this measure. May I ask why? Why did the Philippines, through this measure, if this becomes law, why are we choosing to enact a legislative measure which is discretionary upon the state party to UNCLOS?
Mr. President, there are several reasons why we are now attempting to make into a law the establishment of sea lanes. One, for purposes of national security, Mr. President, the enactment of a sea lane would enable us to monitor movements of foreign vessels, warships that may enter our archipelagic waters, including our territorial sea. Number two, it would strengthen in the eyes, highlight in the eyes of the international community that we are indeed following international law. The Philippines being one of the original signatories of UNCLOS 1, UNCLOS 2, and UNCLOS 3. And number three, the Philippines being an archipelagic country would be able to strengthen, Mr. President, our territorial integrity, Mr. President, given the fact that we are being confronted with several challenges right now. So, Mr. President, various reasons, not just national security, but for purposes of highlighting the need to have an archipelagic sea lanes passage different from the normal route that is being utilized right now. Mr. President, there is really a need to exercise this option, which I mentioned a while ago as not mandatory, because we are just one of the 22 archipelagic states given this option, Mr. President, to designate a sea lane or sea lanes, Mr. President.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the sponsor for mentioning that there are 22 archipelagic states. If we can be informed of the names of the archipelagic states, and so my purpose is maybe we can look at the practice of some of these archipelagic states, Mr. President.
I think I have the names, Mr. President, but Indonesia would be on top of the list. Maldives would be a part of the list. Several Pacific islands would also comprise the list. I'm still trying to secure a copy of the list.
Sige po, but it's I'm sure Indonesia is one of them. Indonesia. Tama po, Mr. President.
Correct, Mr.
Okay,
President.
sige po. Okay, so I think we can look at the practice and experience of Indonesia as a fellow archipelagic state, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, we have established that this is actually a discretionary act upon the Philippines We can enact such a law, and we also can choose not to enact such a law, and we will not be in violation of UNCLOS. Tama po ba, Mr.
Correct,
President?
Mr. President.
Now, Mr. President, what would be the effect? What changes would there be? Because the current state of our country now is we do not have such a law, an archipelagic sea lanes law. What would be the difference now in the state of our country if and when we should have this archipelagic sea lanes law?
To simplify this, Mr. President, and to show with some optics, a few days ago we experienced Typhoon Karina. Typhoon Karina was one of the strongest storms to batter the country in the last few months. We were barraged by news reports that a Chinese vessel, the Chinese Coast Guard vessel, was seen near the vicinity of Manila Bay, Mr. President. And a week prior to Typhoon Karina, pictures of a Chinese Coast Guard vessel within the vicinity of Lubang Island in Mindoro were likewise shown, Mr. President. Just to highlight and to simplify this, with an archipelagic sea lane, we will be able to determine where foreign commercial vessels and warships can pass with our imprimatur, because we will be designating 3 lanes, and where they cannot pass, Mr. President. So it would just highlight the need. And prior to that Lubang incident, there was even a report, and we have pictures to show, wherein a Chinese destroyer was seen passing off Santa Cruz Island in Zamboanga City, Mr. President, definitely within our territorial sea. So we will be preventing these incidents because we will be designating routes wherein our Philippine Navy and Philippine Coast Guard can easily monitor them where they should be passing. And to clarify even further, it would include an overflight route. So this would allow even our radars, our few radars, and monitoring systems of the Philippine Air Force to monitor foreign aircrafts, even in combat formations, above the archipelagic sea lanes, which is part of this bill, Mr. President.
So that our colleagues can follow our discussion, Mr. President, the sponsor is flashing on the screen the map of the Philippines, and then there are green lines, no, Mr. President? We are talking about, when we talk about the archipelagic sea lanes contained in this measure, we are actually referring to those 3 green-colored lines or line segments, Mr. President. Isang nandun sa north, that's in Batanes, number 1. May number 1 po doon, and then there's a number 2 in between, just above Palawan and down to Tawi-Tawi, and then the number 3 is south of Palawan, crossing Basilan and Zamboanga, and then out towards the southern Philippines po yan, Mr. President. So, ang ibig sabihin po ba nito, Mr. President, if this bill becomes law, yang 3 na lang na yan ang archipelagic sea lanes, and outside of the 3 lanes are no sail or no passage waters na po yun? Ganun po ba yun?
That's a very good question, Mr. President. So, the three sea lanes which you just mentioned would include an east to south axis, north to south, west to east, south to north. while the IMO would notify all vessels, commercial or otherwise, to utilize the sea lanes, international law still recognizes the right of innocent passage, Mr. President. The right of innocent passage would include traversing off the sea lanes that
Off
we
sea
are
lanes.
archipelagic sea lanes that we are designating. But the consequences, Mr. President, would be different. Innocent passage would mean that, for instance, a warship of a foreign country should traverse the waters of the Philippines under normal mode. Meaning to say, if it is a submarine, they have to be on the surface and show their flag. That is, if you're not using the archipelagic sea lane. If you're using the archipelagic sea lane, you can be submerged because the implication is that it is a sea lane and our authorities are supposed to monitor them even if they are submerged. So that's the difference. Another difference would be if they are traversing a lane which is, by virtue of innocent passage, they are supposed to conduct activities which would be part of the term innocent. And what are these activities? These would include non-military activities. This would include activities that would not include scientific research, etc., that would include them stopping, dropping anchor, among others, Mr. President. And once it is prejudicial to the safety, and it is determined to be prejudicial to the safety and security of the Philippines, they can be asked to leave, to cease from their activities and be asked to leave, Mr. President. In the archipelagic sea lanes, Mr. President, and one other aspect, Mr. President, both of them would implicate a continuous, expeditious, non-stop voyage, Mr. President. Pareho po yun. Pareho po yun. So, your question is that, mapipigilan ba silang dumaan sa non-sea lane? Hindi po. Hindi po. Maliwanag po yan. Because there are terms that should be really explained if it is innocent passage, if it is freedom of navigation. Magkakaiba po yun. If you speak of innocent passage, dumadaan po sa ating territorial waters. If you speak of freedom of navigation, in simple terms, ito po yung nanggaling sa high seas to another high seas as an exit. And that would include our exclusive economic zone, Mr. President. But the point here is that the innocent passage does not include the overflight. The overflight, Mr. President. Hindi sila pwedeng palipad-lipad yung mga eroplano sa ibabaw ng Cebu, sa ibabaw ng Romblon, sa ibabaw ng Panay, sa ibabaw ng Luzon. But dito po sa archipelagic sea lanes, kasama po yung overflight ng ng mga eroplano.
So, in our measure, when we recognize an archipelagic sea lane, we also recognize an air route above it.
Correct.
The same. But that doesn't mean that there will only be three air routes above the Philippines. Siguro the proper, is it CAB? I think CAB is the proper governmental agency which can negotiate air routes, di ba, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
So-
President. We are a party to the 1964 Chicago Convention, which includes the ICAO, the International Commercial Aeronautics Organization, and they're the ones this is the equivalent of the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, and they're the ones in charge of the air routes. And you can see this. We have apps in our cell phones that can show the various air routes kung saan dumadaan po yung mga eroplano, Mr. President. You're correct.
Yes, and then, Mr. President, I'm sure that there is also a counterpart in air travel regarding innocent passage. Kunyari, the aircraft also encounters some problem. It needs to, anong tawag mo doon? It needs to deviate from the established air route. I mean, that's also innocent air passage, Mr. President. So, ganun ba yun? Is that concept the innocent passage using our waters, Mr. President?
If you're referring to air routes, the Chicago Convention, allows overflight in areas not indicated, not authorized, previously authorized during emergencies, during diversions, diversionary flights you mentioned a while ago, and even to make emergency landings and refueling. But these are limited in scope, Mr. President. But just the same, it is based on treaties, agreements
Okay.
between countries.
No, I was trying to, by analogy, compare the right of innocent passage over waters. I mean, yung right of innocent passage po ba? Kasi because of that right of innocent passage, we can still see foreign ships outside of the archipelagic sea lanes.
Correct.
Pwede.
Correct.
But is the right of innocent passage only available to foreign vessels because of emergencies?
No, Mr.
Force
President.
majeure?
No, Mr. President. Even without emergencies, innocent passage can be invoked, Mr. President. As I mentioned a while ago, innocent passage can be invoked as long as the vessel would not threaten the peace, the security, or order of a coastal state. Makakadaan po sila, and it must be continuous, expeditious, and the vessel, as I have said a while ago,
Yes.
must not engage in any activities that are prejudicial to the coastal state. Example, conducting weapons exercises, espionage, pollution, fishing, and research activities. So, yun po yung sa
Yes.
innocent
But they can also not do that in our archipelagic sea lanes.
Yes.
They
because
also cannot do it.
because it has to be continuous.
Precisely. So,
Yes.
that's my point, Mr. President. So, what is the practical value of archipelagic sea lanes when foreign ships and vessels can stray out of the designated sea lanes in the name of innocent passage, Mr. President? What's the difference, Mr. President?
The difference is that there would be alam nyo, Tagalogin ko na ito, kahit po bawal tumakbo dun sa EDSA bus lane, may napunta pa rin eh. Di ba? So, dapat nasa EDSA ka lang. So, mapipigilan mo bang tumakbo dun sa EDSA bus lane? Hindi. Pero hinuhuli. Kasi bawal nga yun. The same is true with the vessel utilizing the concept of innocent passage, which is recognized in international law. You're allowed to pass through the territorial waters of another state provided you do not threaten the peace. Tuloy-tuloy ka lang. And you operate under normal mode. Nakalabas yung bandera mo, at yung nabanggit ko nga kanina, pwede kang sitahin, paalisin. Okay? Sa archipelagic sea lanes, so since this will be considered a derogation of some of our territorial sea or archipelagic waters, pwede silang dumaan nang hindi sisitahin. Except if you do something again prejudicial to the security of the coastal state. So I think that's the difference. But if you look at international law, Mr. President, there are other terms that can be included, Mr. President. You have transit passage. You have transit passage, and I mentioned a while ago freedom of navigation, Mr. President. So I think these are all parts of a wider universe of maritime law that would really show the rights, obligations, not just of the coastal state, but of the vessels belonging to a flag state.
But will this measure, Mr. President, put order into the
Definitely.
usage or passage or transportation over Philippine waters?
Definitely.
Yun po ba ang epekto nito? Magkaka-order po ba?
Definitely.
Sa ngayon po ba, Wild West ba ang ating karagatan sa pagbiyahe ng mga foreign vessels?
That's how I look at it. Last year, a Chinese vessel was likewise seen loitering off the coast of Giwan in
Dito, Samar.
in Samar, Mr. President. And if you will recall, a few years ago, a Chinese vessel was likewise seen, the word before, and it's still being used now, loitering near the Tawi-Tawi areas. They stopped. So it will put order. It would likewise be an effective tool for marine governance because we have limited resources. So alam na ng Coast Guard kung saan sila magbabantay, alam na ng Navy kung saan sila magbabantay, and it would produce predictability in terms of navigation. 2 weeks ago we had an accident. We're still trying to find out if the fisherman from Zambales is still alive, involving a Chinese vessel named Yang Fu. Binangga po sila because the vessel apparently came out of nowhere, just traversing the route near the Zambales area near Subic. Nahati po yung bangka. So with an archipelagic sea lane, it will now be predictable on the part of our fisher folks where they can fish safely, not expecting an accident, not expecting a boat. So all of this would be clarified within the bounds of not just international law but even our domestic laws, Mr. President.
So, just thank you for that, Mr. President. So, parang mga highway ito, linagyan na natin ng designated highways, diyan kayo dumaan. But it doesn't mean na wala na tayong makikitang foreign vessel outside of that highway, but then, pwede silang sitahin.
Correct, Mr. President.
Pero hindi pa rin sila lahat criminal or law violators because they can invoke the right of innocent passage.
Correct, Mr. President.
Okay.
This is one of the trade-offs that we gave when we asked for a bigger water.
Right.
When we asked for the archipelagic waters. Kasi 22 nga lang tayo, and you asked for the 22 states, and if I can mention that for the record,
Sige.
Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Cape Verde, Comoros, Dominican Republic, Fiji, Grenada, Indonesia, Solomon Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, the Philippines, of course, kasama po doon. So, ito po yung 22 states.
Siguro po, if we look for a model, I think it should be Indonesia. Indonesia, yes. So, has Indonesia chosen to enact their own discretionary law like this one, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President. Indonesia has its own version of an archipelagic sea lanes law, and they were the first, and they really struggled to have their law accepted by the international community because there were objections before coming from Australia and the United States, and it took them several years to hurdle the IMO challenge. Because under UNCLOS, Mr. President, even if we pass this, and the Philippines, I'd like to make this on record, the Philippines is a member of the IMO Council till this year. Even if we pass this, it will take us another 6 more months to have this calendared in the IMO agenda. They have to approve this because under UNCLOS, it has to be approved by an international organization. And the international organization here is the International Maritime Organization. So they will still vet this. They can still reject. If there are objections from other states, they can still reject. But what is positive on our side is we have the experience of Indonesia, and we have been announcing to the IMO that we will soon be filing our own version of the ASL. So it is as if we have given them the heads up, Mr. President.
So this is an example of a law passed by the national legislature of the Philippines, which will be of conditional effectivity because we have conceded or surrendered part of our sovereignty that this particular law needs to be approved by some other entity, Mr. President?
I think this is if you're looking at if you're looking at some Supreme Court decisions, or a good colleague Senator Pia Cayetano mentioned a Supreme Court decision a while ago. If you're looking at the doctrine of auto limitation, probably this is one, but we're not surrendering a portion of our right as a country, because if you look at another Supreme Court decision, that's the Magallona case, even if we refer this as an internal water, archipelagic waters, still we will have exclusive sovereignty. Mr. President, we're not surrendering something, not even the legislative function of this Congress. What this law would just show is that we are complying with international standards, because the seas, the waters, is not just the Philippines per se. All waters, Pacific Ocean, West Philippine Sea, Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, they're part of one corpus of waters, Mr. President. So as a member of the international community in good standing, we deemed it necessary when we signed UNCLOS that we will abide by the regulations of the international community. And UNCLOS, for that matter, specified that an international organization would have an oversight to synchronize all maritime activities, and that is the International Maritime Organization, Mr. President. That's why I think because of the word may, we can. It's not mandatory. So it's
Yes,
not
okay.
a surrender of our...
Para klaro lang po, Mr. President. Okay. Itong panukalang batas, naging batas. Pumasa na sa House, kunyari, pumasa sa Senado, pinirmahan ng Presidente ng Republika ng Pilipinas. 3 archipelagic sea lanes ang ating rini-recognize. Pero hindi pa po siya effective unless approved by the IMO. Is that a correct statement?
Correct, Mr. President.
And because we allowed, we agreed to such a procedure when we joined UNCLOS.
That's correct, Mr. President.
Okay, so alam po natin yan. Okay, so ngayon, Mr. President, bakit pwede mag-object ang ibang bansa? Nagdedebate na tayo rito. Debate tayo mga Pilipinos, nagdedebate, nagre-research tayo, sarili nating mga dagat ito. Bakit pwede mag-object ang ibang bansa at sino sila? limitado ba ito sa mga bansang bumabiyahe na sa Philippine waters noon pa, historically? Or can a landlocked country also object to our sea lanes, Mr. President?
You're correct, Mr. President. I also was questioning the merit of this. But if you look at the interconnectedness of the global economy and the maritime trade and our oceans, isa lang po talaga yan. And the purpose of having an archipelagic sea lane is really to connect an entry point to an exit coming from the high seas of an entry point of one vessel coming from the high seas going to another portion of the high seas. Dinaanan lang po tayo.
Passing through an archipelago.
Yes, dinaanan lang po
Tama
tayo.
po ba yan? It's passing through an archipelago.
Yes.
Yes, apo.
Hindi po tayo considered just as an ordinary strait. Tayo po ay dinaanan papunta sa isang lugar at tayo po ay nagbigay lamang ng traffic separation scheme. At yung traffic separation scheme pong yun ay para po mabalanse ang swift passage ng mga barko for fuel consumption, for environmental impact, and for security purposes, etc., etc. So, lahat pong ito ay interconnected again, Mr. President, to minimize pollution, protect the marine ecosystem. Marami pong, Mr. President, gaya po ng Strait of Malacca. Ay talagang daanan po yon. Hindi pwedeng i-separate yun na Singapore lang. Gaya po ng English Channel.
But the Strait of Malacca is not an archipelagic sea lane.
No.
Yes.
No. So ibig
Okay na
sabihin po,
yun. Opo.
yung mga ganitong dagat connected po lahat 'yan. Gaya po nung sa taas natin, yung sa taas kung makikita nyo, I'm showing it here. This is the Balintang Channel. The Balintang Channel,
Hindi makita din. Yeah, sige, sa kanila nyo na po iharap sa colleagues po natin.
Kasi na
Apo.
po, maliit yung
Apo.
Ito pong Balintang Channel. Ito pong sa right hand side. Ito po yung Pacific Ocean. This goes to Los Angeles, etc., etc.
Japan.
Ito naman po yung patawid papunta po ng West Philippine Sea, South China Sea. So this is a major international trade route. Even all the fiber optics cables are there, Mr. President. So
Already being used
yes.
as a trade route. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So we are just institutionalizing this kasi meron pa ho doon sa baba yung Babuyan Island Channel. So doon tayo sa Balintang Channel. So predictable na doon dadaan. Tapos si Coast Guard, limited lang yung resources natin, nakabantay na po doon si Coast Guard. Kung ano man yung mga violations, they can board, etc., etc. And in the future, Mr. President, with this, we can generate revenues. You know why?
Yes.
Similar to what Singapore is doing, we can later on exercise pilotage, towing, and even some customs revenues. Kasi sa Singapore, malayo pa lang, pwede silang maningil. And this is an international port. Nandito po yung Cagayan Export Processing Zone, Mr. President. So, ganun din po doon sa baba. So, marami pong pwedeng revenues na ma-generate in the future, Mr. President.
Are we sure about that, Mr. President? Because I thought the archipelagic sea lanes passage should be continuous.
Yes. But
So
pag meron po, halimbawa, Mr. President, pag meron pong nasiraan, pag meron humingi ng saklolo, natural tayo po yun nandun. Tayo po yung merong mga tugboats na pwedeng iparada ron. And for the information of the body, yun nangyari po nung isang araw, naputol lang po yung lubid doon sa tugboat. noong Terra Nova na nagkokos ngayon ng
yun,
oil spill dito po mula sa Limay, Bataan hanggang Cavite na papuntang Batangas. At meron pa hong isa, hindi pa ho nasa dyaryo, si MV Dorothy. Si MV Dorothy nag-capsize din sa area na yon, almost similar time. So, yung mga ganun po, sino ho yung mga tumutulong doon? Yung mga tugboats, yung mga rescue boats ng iba't ibang mga malalaking maritime companies, Mr. President. So, ganun po yung magiging role natin.
We're just making it more organized. Kasi actually, ginagamit na sila ngayon, Mr. President. Tama po ba? Ginagamit na, right? Dinadaanan na ng mga
Ginagamit
foreign
sila,
vessels.
but-
At accidents also happen now. Kahit wala pa tong ASL law.
I totally agree.
So,
Ginagamit sila, but there are a lot of other sea lanes out there. Ang unang proposal po nito, for the record, ng executive branch is to have 11 sea lanes. Nilimit lang po natin sa 3. Kasi mas madali natin ma-monitor yung 3 kaysa yung 11. Yung 11, pag nakita nyo, ang gulo na ho niyan. Ang dami na dadaanan, papunta na ng Mindoro, papunta na ng kung saan-saan. So, minaximize po natin the shortest, most expeditious route and that can be easily monitored, Mr. President.
So is it possible, Mr. President, na merong foreign country na magsabi na we prefer that you use some of those 8 other ASLs that kasi most likely yung pinropose ng executive branch na 11, most likely yan yung currently in use as the traditional sea routes of commercial vessels, etc., Mr. President? Traditional, historical, Mr. President?
Correct, Mr. President, but for security reasons, Mr. President, hindi po natin papayagan yon kasi there are some sea routes that are called in military parlance choke points. Ito po halimbawa ang tawag dati dyan ng Philippine Navy invasion routes. Ito po yung kung saan sumalaka yung Hapon noon at saan din bumalik si MacArthur. Ito po yung Leyte Gulf, ito po yung area doon sa may Giwan, na pag binuksan pa ho natin yan, ito na po yung heartland of the Philippines. Yan na po yung masasakop na po tayo. Mr. President, hindi natin bubuksan yun
Okay.
sa mga military warships. So, nilimit lang natin dito na hindi naman tayo lugi. Lahat pong ito ay dahil humingi tayo ng napakalaking concession sa United Nations Law of the Sea Conference na magkaroon ng ganyang kalaking karagatan, Mr. President. Ay binigay sa atin yan, pero sabi nila, bibigyan namin kayo ng ganyang kalaking jurisdiction, but you have to make some concessions, Mr. President.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Yes, Mr. President, so salamat po, no? Yung Sagian siguro, that would be the requested east to west crossing. Meron gano'n eh. So at least we can say na meron tayong east to west or west to east yung Balintang Channel, and maybe even that number 3. But that number 3 can also qualify as an east to west.
North to south.
North to south would be
number
number 2.
three, yes.
Number
East
3
to
would
west,
be the
yes. Correct,
east to
correct,
west,
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
And one thing, Mr. President, is that we have complied with what is required of us under international law to have that water-to-land ratio.
Okay.
May water-to-land ratio. Ang ratio po dapat is 1:1 is to 9:1. And the computation here is that we will be having an archipelagic waters to land ratio of 2:1. Ang atin pong karagatan is 586,000 square kilometers. Ang atin pong lupa ay 295,000 plus square kilometers. So we are we have fully complied, Mr. President.
With the formula. So, Mr. President, ang concern ko na lang po rito at kung pwedeng mapursu ko to bukas, may session pa naman tayo bukas, is yung, kasi ang debate noon, nung ako pa po ang chair ng Committee on Justice, dito po to napag-usapan is, should the sea lanes be designated by law only, and so only sea lanes designated by law are the sea lanes, or do we delegate it to the President? And I think this particular measure contains a delegation provision. So, kung pwede pong pag-usapan na rin natin po yun if I can, during the second part of my interpellation.
Solely on that topic, Mr. President. Solely on that point.
Well, and also siguro yung who will police sinong ating mga traffic enforcers po dyan, kasi nung alam ko noon nagkaka-turf war pa noon eh. So I just want to know if this has been solved, Mr. President, and how the sponsor solved it, Mr. President, on who is the main traffic enforcer in the three designated archipelagic sea lanes. So with that, Mr. President, if I can request that my interpellation be suspended until tomorrow, because we are supportive of this measure, Mr. President. So, ano natin? We just suspend because I think former Senate President Mig Zubiri, yes. We'll sponsor a resolution to honor, to commend our former colleague. Yes, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, we thank the good minority leader for reserving just 3 vital questions
Yes,
tomorrow
more or less 3.
on the aspect of delegation of legislative power and the matter of enforcement. And the last one would be,
Yes. 3 questions, but I reserve follow-up questions depending on the answer of the sponsor, Mr. President. Thank you. So, if we can suspend my interpellation, thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that I resume my role as Majority Leader, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2665.
In objection, the motion is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution 1070, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolutions 1074,
Mali.
1079, and 1094. This is the resolution commending Senator Sani Angara. I so move, Mr. President.
In objection, there being none, the motion is approved. Consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1070, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolutions number 1074, 1079, and 1094 is now in order. The Secretary will read the title of the resolution.
Resolution expressing the sincere appreciation of the Senate to Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara for his exemplary service to the institution and to the Filipino people as Senator of the Philippines.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, and the following senators would likewise deliver co-sponsorship speeches. In the following order: the Senate President, Chis Escudero, this representation, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Villanueva, Senator Binay, Senator Ligarda, Senator Ejercito, Senator Cayetano. Senator Revilla expressed his intention to have his speech inserted into the record. Senator De La Rosa, Senator Grace Poe, and Senator Jinggoy Estrada. And the members of the minority would likewise co-sponsor. Mr. President, I renew my motion to recognize Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri for his sponsorship speech.
Senator Zubiri is recognized to deliver his sponsorship speech.
Yeah.
Mr. President, may I ask for just a minute suspension so that we can allow the good gentleman, the new Secretary of Education, to join us he's in the building, so he's on his way down.
Session suspended for a minute.
Thank you.
To recognize Senator, the Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, and I move, Mr. President, that we recognize our Senate President, Jesus Cordero.
The Senate President is recognized.
With the permission of the body, Mr. President, and prior authorization from Senator Villar and our distinguished majority floor leader, may I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2558 and request the I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the resumption of consideration of Senate Bill 2558 is now in order.
Mr. President, again, upon prior authorization from the distinguished chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, I have the honor to propose the following amendment. This will be the lone amendment in the period of individual amendments.
Please proceed.
Only two amendments, Mr. President. Number one, on page 22, lines 17 and 18, insert the following section. Section 18, appointment of directors of project or project leaders, other Carabao centers of the PCC. The directors or project leaders of the Carabao centers nationwide shall be appointed by the executive director following a selection and promotion process to be established by the PCC. Section 19, implementation and coordination of PCC programs. The PCC Advisory Board, through the Executive Director, shall coordinate, monitor, and evaluate the implementation of the Carabao program. It shall identify through the directors of the Carabao centers the project leaders from the various implementing stations, the programs and projects in the areas of the reproduction, breeding, distribution, nutrition, animal health, and processing of Carabao meat and milk. It shall formulate strategies relative to the production and distribution of Philippine Carabao. Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao shall have 14 Carabao centers. The centers in Luzon shall be located in Ibilos Baños, in Laguna, Central Luzon State University in Nueva Ecija, Cagayan State University in Cagayan, Mariano Marcos State University in Ilocos Norte, Don Mariano Marcos Memorial State University in La Union, the Central Bicol State University of Agriculture, CBS-UA in Pili, Camarines Sur. The centers in Visayas shall be in La Carlota Stock Farm, in Negros Occidental, Ubay Stock Farm, in Bohol, Visayas State University in Leyte, West Visayas State University in Iloilo. The centers in Mindanao shall be in Caraga State University in Butuan, Central Mindanao State University in Bukidnon, University of Southern Mindanao in North Cotabato, and Mindanao Livestock Production Center, MLPC, in Zamboanga del Norte. These centers shall specialize in the development of technology and reproduction, breeding, nutrition, animal health, and processing of meat and milk, and renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
And number two, Mr. President, on page 32, line 29, after the first mention of the number 7884, insert the sections 10 and 12 of Republic Act number 7307, and on the same line 29, after the second mention of the number 7884, insert and Republic Act number 7307. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
There being no further amendments, I move that we close the period of individual amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
I move that we suspend further consideration of Senate Bill number 2558.
Is there an objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of the proposed resolution commending the Honorable Senator Sani Angara. And to sponsor the measure is Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Zubir is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Mr. President, it is my great honor to sponsor today Resolution number 1070, expressing the Senate's sincere appreciation to our dear friend, our seatmate, our brother, no other than our new Secretary of Education, Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara. When former Senate President Edgardo J. Angara gave his valedictory address in this very hall 11 years ago, he said, and I quote, "I leave more confident than ever that a new breed of young and vibrant legislators will inject vitality to governance and propound fresh ideas to address our foremost challenges. I call on them to build on the legacy we leave behind, even as they strive to build their own." And who else should be more perfectly embodied to promise on the promise of the great Senator Ed Angara? No other than his very own flesh and blood, Senator Sani Angara. In the last 2 decades, Senator Sani, as you can see these pictures, working very hard in the Senate, has proven his worth as a legislator, authoring and sponsoring over 340 laws across his time in the House and in the Senate, with a particular focus on education, youth, empowerment, healthcare, labor, finance, local government, and good governance. Here in the Senate, he took on the responsibility of heading a number of key committees, most notably the Senate Committee on Finance, a daunting and demanding committee at any given time, but especially so at the height of and immediate wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lesser legislator likely would have buckled under the weight of the unforeseen challenges brought on by COVID and the impact it had on our national spending and, of course, of our priorities. But as the finance chairperson, Senator Sani Angara was competent and decisive. We could always trust him to be prudent in running the numbers and ensuring that our national budget is truly responsive to the needs of our people. It is the same competence that allowed him to ably lead the Committee on Ways and Means, another one that requires meticulous and heavy-duty work. Here, he readily took on the thankless job of being our resident taxman, a highly difficult but necessary role that one he chose to do with great resolve. But a head for numbers alone does not make a good leader. What Senator Sani has at the core is a heart for public service, evident in his advocacy measures such as the landmark Tatak Pinoy Act, which was the culmination of years and years of hard work in aim of elevating our local industries and creating more opportunities for our workers. It is now actually a tagline. When we see something good in the manufacturing industry, basta made in the Philippines, Tatak Pinoy yan. And of course, we must not forget his work for the youth and education sectors. Dito natin talagang nakita kung ano ang alagang Angara. Diba? Ngayon, makikita na ng ilang milyon, 20 million students all over the country. Youth empowerment and education has been the center of Senator Sani Angara's priorities across his legislative career. When we say Sani Angara, we think of Ladderized Education Act, the Unified Student Financial Assistance Systems Act, the Student Fair Discount Act, the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Act, and of course, our Free Tertiary Education Act, which, by the way, his father authored the Free High School Education Act. all vital measures that have made it easier for the Filipino youth to become active agents of their own lives and active partners in national development. I'm certain his parents, my mentor, Tito Ed Angara, and Tita Gloria, are nothing less than proud of Senator Sani for continuing their legacy as legislators and educators, as advocates for accessible quality education for every Filipino. And while we in the Senate are sure to feel his absence throughout the rest of the 19th Congress, we're also very proud to see him take on the enormous task of heading the Department of Education at this very crucial time for Filipino learners. You know, it's not included in my speech, but I just want to say, if there is any one person who is able and willing and has the background of education for this position, it's no other than Sunny, a graduate of Xavier School for your elementary and high school, where my kids are also studying now. I put them there because of you, not because of JB. Also because of JB, the two of you. Sabi ko matitino yata yung mga Xavier graduates. I said, of course, you have Gibo Teodoro, who's also a secretary, who's also a Xavier graduate, and many other Xavier graduates. And then you graduated to become a member of UP. You were in the UP University of the Philippines at Diliman. And when you graduated your, was it the Bachelor of Arts on Laws? Is it for lawyers? Bachelor of Laws? You immediately proceeded to Harvard for your masteral. Was it Harvard or LSE? I forget which one's first. Harvard University. Hindi yung Harvardian College sa Laguna. Ito po ay ang Harvard University ng Boston. The number 1, number 2, number 3, the top 2 universities of this, of course, of this planet, no? of the world. And then you also further took on more education in the London School of Economics. You know, these are top universities of the world. You have Harvard, London School of Economics, and of course UP, as we are all biased with our alma mater. But that shows how well prepared he is in his task as Education Secretary. He also played a crucial role in the passage of the EDCOM 2. His father was the author of EDCOM 1. Am I correct, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Joel? And he also became principal author of EDCOM 2. So he brings with him a girth of information and of, I'd say, experience in his over 20 years of public service career. I'm glad we're not seeing him retiring, because he would have ended his term in 2025 and he would have been, yes, we were hoping that he could follow the judiciary, but I'm so happy that he was chosen by this administration to head the Department of Education. I know it's a very daunting task, Senator Angara, but many of us here are willing to help you. We always said that the ills that are plaguing our country is all mostly on education, or the lack of it. So we will be here to support you. I, one, will support you, especially in your hearings in the commission appointments, and of course the budget that the DepEd needs in the next 3 years for your reign to be successful. I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, as a senator, he has been he's been very competent in the heat of crisis and brilliant in the face of difficulty. So I have every faith that the Secretary of Education, he will be able to untangle the problems besetting the sector. And I know that, like Tito Ed, Secretary Sani Angara carries every Filipino learner in his heart, and he will do everything to give them a fair shot at succeeding in life. My only, I'd say, not regret, but sadness is that we'll be missing you here for a year. We won't be seeing you in this august chamber. And we'll be missing your jokes, your one-liners, your punchlines, your inquisitive nature, and of course, your problem-solving skills. Because one thing Senator Sonny Angara is a jolly fellow. We always have a good time. But when we have to discuss serious matters, he's one of the crunch. He's the person during crunch time that you can go to, and he will really help you. So, once again, Senator Sonny Angara, we salute you. We wish you all the best. We pray to God that He gives you more blessings in life, most especially the information, the skills to be able to bring our people, especially the children of this country, reach better heights with with you in the helm as the Secretary of Education. Once again, saludo kami sa iyo. Mabuhay ka, Secretary Sonny. We love you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair thanks. Senator Zubiri, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver his co-sponsorship speech is no less than the Senate President himself.
Ano raw?
Co-sponsorship speech.
No, I was about to say the chair would like to just simply insert my co-sponsorship speech into the records and be read into the records. So next we have, I guess,
Yes, Mr. President, I likewise would follow your lead and would have my co-sponsorship speech be inserted into the records. This is a long speech extolling the lives, the life, 9 lives. I'll just have this inserted into the record. Mr. President, next to co-sponsor is our dear colleague, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, a pleasant day to you all. I am happy to stand before you today to express my heartfelt appreciation for the exemplary service and unwavering dedication of Senator, now Secretary Juan Edgardo Sonny Angara, to this esteemed institution and to the Filipino people. As the chairman of the Senate Committee on Basic Education, I have witnessed firsthand his commitment to our shared mission, his passion for education, and his tireless efforts to uplift the lives of our youth have been a source of inspiration to all of us. His tireless advocacy for access to quality basic education has been a hallmark of his tenure in both chambers of Congress. Our collaborative efforts on crafting landmark laws such as the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, the Inclusive Education Act, the Alternative Learning Systems Act, are just a few testament to his dedication to empowering Filipino students. Ang mga batas na ito ay hindi lamang tagumpay ng buong Senado, kundi patunay din ng kanyang dedikasyon tungo sa pag-angat ng antas ng edukasyon sa ating bansa. It was also then Senator Angara's resolution that the committee used as basis in crafting the law that established the Second Congressional Commission on Education, where he eventually became a commissioner. He fulfilled this role with commitment and enthusiasm, and I have personally witnessed him study and propose brilliant solutions to address the various challenges besetting our education sector, especially in the field of education, governance, and finance. His education advocacy indeed continues the enduring legacy of his beloved father and our role model, the late Senator Edgardo Angara. And I believe that this legacy will live on in the Angara family, as I remember that he even brought his son Manolo to UPBGC on the first meeting of EDCOM in January of 2023. It was hard to see a dedicated and able commissioner leave the EDCOM, but Secretary Sonny's appointment is not only well-deserved, it is pivotal for the Department of Education to have a leader whose solid background in education is backed with a solid background in finance. I have no reservation that his leadership will lead to the inception, if not fulfillment, of the most crucial needed reforms in basic education that this time will be supported by strategic and sustainable investments. In fact, his last bill for this Congress, which I have the honor of filing jointly with him, is the revised Adopt a School Act, which expands the areas and opportunities of assistance that the private sector can extend to public education institutions. This is one practical but powerful response to solve the problem of limited resources to address the serious crisis that our education system is facing. Mr. Secretary, you can count on our full cooperation in the passage of this legislative measure to support the programs and reforms that you will champion in the Department of Education. Sabi nga ni Senator Mig Zubiri, full support. Lastly, our dear seatmate, let me express our legacy in the Senate, and your new role as Secretary of the Department of Education inspire us all. Your dedication, integrity, and unwavering commitment to public service have set a high bar for all of us to aspire to. We are confident that under your leadership, the Department of Education will continue to thrive and transform the lives of countless Filipino learners. Kasama mo kami sa misyong ito at tiwala kong maisa sa katuparan natin ang mga kinakailangang reforma para sa ikabubuti ng ating mga kababayan. Again, congratulations, Secretary Sani Angara. Mabuhay ka. Nandito lang kami ng mga kasama mo. Thank you, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues.
Sir, I would like to thank Senator Gatchalian for his remarks. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, again to co-sponsor the measure, move to recognize Senator Pia Cayetano. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Cayetano is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I filed Senate Resolution 1094. All the accomplishments of Senator Angara are already there. I will not repeat it. We are all very proud of his accomplishments. The older ones here have been his classmates in the lower house. Many of the bills that our colleague Senator Angara sponsored when he was in the House, I co-sponsored when I was in the Senate. And then a few years later, after his father retired, we worked together on many education bills. Like I said, those are all in the resolutions that many of us have filed. I'd like to take a minute or two. I've asked our colleagues to indulge me. Sumingit po ako sa apat sa kanila. Senator Angara will be truly missed. This is not an easy job. Many of us have worked together for 9, 12, some longer because of the time they've spent in the House. And it is not easy to disagree with your friends. It is not easy to argue with your friends. It is not easy to try to convince your friends of positions that you hold that may be different from theirs. I can honestly say I did not really encounter much difficulty working with Senator Angara. It's usually quite easy to deal with, but I know when he's firm, and I never tried to bother changing his mind if he was already decided about something. But I have had the pleasure of knowing him since he was 2 years old. He was a cute little toddler. Yeah, he was 2. Our fathers were colleagues in the law office. And then I never saw him again. So I have this memory of him, 2 years old, and then suddenly he's a grown man. Mukha namang intelligent. Nung naririnig ko sa House, I didn't get a chance to work with him yet at that time. Graduate naman sa kilalang university sa Amerika, and then graduate ng aming alma mater, isang abogado from UP. So I was looking forward to working with him in the Senate, and I just have to say he did not disappoint. It's been a pleasure working with Senator Angara. Usually, we don't get a chance to say to the face of our colleagues that it was a pleasure working with them, because the times that we stand up here to honor them, they are dead. And so we're grateful that Senator Angara is not dead and he is alive today to hear our many pleasant. I mean it truthfully. The times I've spent here, the Minority Floor Leader is laughing, but I've had to stand here to honor his father. I've had to stand here to honor the father of Senator Angara. I've had to honor so many long-gone colleagues, and if you think about it, how many times did you get to say to their face na you honor them for the work they do? So I'm happy to get to say it to Senator Angara. I take great pride in having a colleague who also takes pride in taking care of his health and his health and his well-being. So I told him that as the vice chairman of the Committee on Finance, the position I held under him and which I continue to hold, one of my first tasks is look at the state of the sports foundation in Ultra, which is near his office, to ensure that the incoming secretary, the secretary, but who will soon be approved by the CA, has a environment that is conducive to staying healthy and leading the department. When he takes on this task to take care of the teachers, it's also important that he leads by example. So I'm looking at his team here, who I suppose you're not out of a job. I suppose you are going to be working with him. So if you can push him out the door at a certain time and then walk around the track oval, ang kaya lang namin mag-guarantee, hindi butas-butas yung track oval na yon, tapos yung banyo, malinis, may swimming pool din, doon, marunong ba kayo lumangoy? Does your boss know how to swim? Okay, so ang dami hong exercise na pwedeng gawin because this colleague of ours has supported all my initiatives on having a healthy body and a healthy mind. So the least we can do is when he as he assumes his new post, that he also has that opportunity to take care of his body as he takes care of his 1 million teachers ba? Ilan yung teachers niyo? How many million teachers and students? Okay, I don't know the number, but the millions of people you have to take care of. My fervent wish is that you're able to take care of yourself. So I leave it at that, Mr. President. I have so many more stories to share, but there will be opportunities. I pray that our colleague, Senator Joel, will be able to sustain himself without his sparring partner. I hope that, yeah, exactly. I hope that there will be opportunities for you to still play basketball. I don't know, do you have a rule that allows Senator Angara to still play with the Senate team? Is that allowed? He still can. So I think that is that will be much needed for his mental health. We have passed laws on mental health, and we must also help him. The Senate President Pro Temp, do not distract the recipient of all my good. Do not talk to the honoree, so we can make sure that my lectures on mental health are fully absorbed. No, but Mr. President, again, we're honored to see that I don't want to say usually. There are times that we are not happy with the appointments that are made. Many times we are mumbling and wondering why a certain person was appointed. But in this particular case, the loss of the Senate is the gain of DepEd. So we thank the President for the faith he has in our colleague, and I know that the years of Senate work has prepared him for this job. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair thanks the lady for her remarks. Majority Floor Leader.
The President to co-sponsor the measure and move to recognize Senator Joel Villanueva. So move, Mr. President.
Senator Villanueva is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, thank you, Majority Leader. Dear colleagues, Mr. President, it is with great pride and honor to co-sponsor proposed Senate Resolution number 1070, honoring and expressing the Senate's sincere appreciation to one of the most hard-working, productive, and brilliant public servants of our time, the pride of Aurora Province, our seatmate, our compadre, our brother, Senator, and now Secretary Sani, Juan Edgardo Sani Angara. Alam niyo po, mula nung ma-appoint si Senator Sani pakiramdam ko po, aaminin ko na yung sinasabi ni Senator Pia, nagkaroon po ako ng separation anxiety. Kaya kung pwede nga ho, natetempt nga ako na mag-move na ibalik na lang sa Senado si Senator Angara, pero sinabihan niya na po ako pag ginawa ko daw po, mag-move siya na ibalik ako sa TESDA, kaya hindi na lang po. But kidding aside, Mr. President, noong pong 2012, unang beses po akong naimbitahan ni Senator Angara doon sa kanyang hometown, sa Baler, Aurora. At hindi ko po makalimutan noong ni-require niya po akong mag-surfing. So, nag-surfing po ako, ayan ho yung picture namin. Nag-surfing po ako at hindi ko po makalimutan nung pinag-surfing po nila kami doon sa Sabang Beach sa Baler. Habang inaaral ko po yung mag-surf, sinabihan po ako nung instructor. Sabi po nung instructor sa akin, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. Senator Sani, the Department of Education is like a colossal wave. But I know, brother, in my heart that you are the most prepared to face it. Mr. President, Senator Angara's accomplishments over the past 2 decades speak volumes about his ability to address our education challenges. Wala pong duda na nasa dugong Angara ang pagmamahal sa sektor ng edukasyon. Ang kanya pong ama, ang ating idolo, ating mentor, kulang yung salita para i-describe ko ho kung gaano ako tinulungan ni former Senate President Tito Ed Angara, na siya pong nagsulong ng EDCOM 1. At si Senator Sani naman, ang isa sa mga nanguna sa pagtataguyod ng EDCOM 2, na may mahalagang papel sa pag-aangat ng antas ng edukasyon sa ating minamahal na bansa. Mr. President, Senator Angara's unwavering dedication to serving the nation is exemplified by more than 340 laws that he has authored and co-sponsored. In simple arithmetic, he averaged 17 laws, Mr. President, for every single year in service. 17 laws. Considering now, Mr. President, that it's so hard to pass a legislation, this is an incredible feat, Mr. President. Yung mga iba nga, natapos na yung termino sa Kongreso, wala pa rin napasa ni isang batas. His achievements also embody the essence of Alagang Angara. The quality of the laws passed by the gentleman from Aurora is equally outstanding, covering the important and urgent concerns of the education, health, labor, and sports sectors, and delivering social justice to the vulnerable sectors of our society. Mr. President, he authored landmark legislations such as free kindergarten law, the Tatak Pinoy law, the recently signed new Government Procurement Act, among others. Pauubusan ho ako ng oras kung iisa-isahin ko yung mga landmark legislation na pinasa ni Senator Angara. But aside from this, he ably led the Committee on Finance in taking on the gargantuan task of scrutinizing and defending the annual national budget. His legislative accomplishments are best summarized by the vision that he set. And to paraphrase, Mr. President, sabi po ni Senator Angara, sinisiguro at sinisiguro ni Senator Angara na ang bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino mula kay baby at kina ate at kuya hanggang kina nanay at tatay, pati na sina lolo at lola, ay sinusuportahan at inaalagaan nang sa gayon ay mabigyan silang lahat ng pagkakataong mangarap ng isang magandang kinabukasan para sa isang masagana at mas mapag-arugang Pilipinas. Ako po'y isang buhay na saksi, buhay na patotoo, na tunay na iba nga talaga ang Alagang Angara. The long list of accomplishments does not fully capture his brilliance in his career, both as public servant and in private. I have had the honor of working alongside with him, Mr. President, for most part of our political careers in government, spanning for more than 20 years. And I am immensely proud of the legislators we have both become. At work, on the court, and even in life, I like to think of Senator Sani Angara and I as modern-day dynamic duo of Bob Cousy and Bill Sharman. the original star backcourts of the Boston Celtics. We were dubbed sa UNTV Cup na Splash Brothers. Kaya pala nung humiwalay na si Klay Thompson kay Steph, humiwalay na rin sa Senado si Senator Angara. Nais kong banggitin, Mr. President, na sa bulwagang ito, punong-puno ng suporta ang buong Senate basketball team na nasa gallery. Kasama natin, Mr. President, sapagkat nais din nilang magbigay pugay sa aming Captain Ball, Senator Sani Angara. Please allow me to play a short video, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished colleague. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate the concern and passion also of our dear colleague, our chairperson of the Committee on Finance. I'm sure he would appreciate this more, Mr. President, if we will be able to pass this measure and it becomes a law. It will help us very much in deliberation of our national budget. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to take this opportunity to assure the DepEd family and the nation that Senator Sani Angara is the best man for the job. He knows the sector like the back of his hand. For quality education has been one of his biggest advocacies as a public servant. Bill Russell, the great Bill Russell, once said, "Heart in champions has to do with the depth of one's motivation and how well one's mind and body reacts to pressure. That is, being able to do what you do best under maximum pain and stress." Kaya ho nagpa-picture kami ni Senator Angara kay Bill Russell at yung nagpagawa po ng post na yan ay si Senator Angara at siya din ho ang kumuha ng litrato na yan. At sana tanggalin na po ngayon. I know, Mr. President, that the task is daunting given the state of the education sector in the country today. But I also know for a fact that Senator Sani Angara has the heart of a champion. Just like the legendary Bill Russell, Senator Sani is the ultimate teammate. He elevated us, his seatmates and teammates at the Senate. He has a defensive anchor as he championed bills and defended them in plenary. So I have zero doubt that he will be the sector's most valuable player. Senator Sani never gives up. He doesn't fold under pressure. And I think my teammates here in the gallery would attest to that. Na kahit na mataas ang pressure, anumang laro, anumang klaseng laro mayroon o nangyayari sa basketball court, kahit lamang ang kalaban, konti na lang ang oras, maaasahan pa rin na teammate si Senator Angara. Hindi ko na ho kayang bilangin, Ginoong Pangulo, kung ilang beses niya akong pinagaling sa larong basketball, kung ilang beses na niyang nagbigay ng bola o assist, hindi lang sa basketball, kung hindi sa larangan ng buhay. Kaya bagamat nalulungkot po ang representasyon na ito, Mr. President, na magkahiwalay na ang Splash Brothers ng Senado, mananatili po kami na magkatuwang sa pagpapaunlad ng sektor ng edukasyon at sa pagsisilbi sa bayan. So Brad, Sani, hangad ko ang tagumpay mo sa DepEd at ipapanalangin ko ito araw-araw dahil ang tagumpay mo ay tagumpay ng bawat batang Pilipino. As I wish you all the best, allow me to use the favorite expression of your kababayan in Baler. Akaw. Thank you, Brad, and may God bless you more.
Chair thanks Senator Villanueva, Majority Floor Leader.
Next to co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President, is Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Nancy Binay is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, it is my privilege and honor to co-sponsor Senate Resolution 1070, expressing the sincere appreciation of the Senate to Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara for his exemplary service to the institution and to the Filipino people as a Senator of the Philippines. Former Senator and now Education Secretary Juan Edgardo Sonny Manalang Angara was one of our most hardworking and productive legislators. He authored and sponsored more than 340 laws in his 18 years in Congress, having first served as Aurora Province Representative from 2004 to 2013, and then Senator from 2013 to 2024. As a testament to his hard work, he was recognized as one of the country's 10 outstanding young men for government service and legislation in 2010. Mapalad po ang inyong lingkod dahil naging seatmate natin siya nitong mga nakaraang taon at naging saksi tayo kung gaano kasipag at kadedikado si Secretary Sonny sa mga responsibilidad na naiatas sa kanya. He was the chair of the Senate Committee on Finance during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and he helped steer our national response through legislation like the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act, the National COVID-19 Vaccination Program Act, and the Health Emergency Allowance for Health Workers Law. With his proven track record of getting things done, hindi na ako nagtataka na buo ang tiwala sa kanya ng Pangulo at ibinigay sa kanya ang pagkakataong maging kalihim ng kagawaran ng edukasyon. However, him being appointed as the Education Secretary is bittersweet because DepEd's gain deals a huge blow to us in the Senate. Alam niyo po, iilan na lang ang abogado sa Senado at ngayon nabawasan pa ng isa. That said, I will always maintain that Secretary Angara is the best man for the DepEd post. His parents, former UP and Senate President Edgardo Javier Angara, and history teacher Gloria Manalang instilled in him the value of education as a tool to fight poverty. As a result, he pushed for laws that ensure greater access to education. He authored landmark legislation like the Free College Law, the Free Kindergarten Law, Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, and the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. He was also an EDCOM II commissioner, and in his capacity as then chair of the Senate Committee on Finance, he championed significant educational reforms and made sure urgent interventions had the necessary fiscal support. Mga kaibigan, taong 2013, sabay kaming pumasok sa Senado ni Secretary Sana at dapat sana ay sabay din kaming magtatapos sa 2025. Ngunit hindi umayon ang tadhana at nauna na siyang graduate dito sa Senado para harapin ang mabigat na hamon na ayusin ang sistema ng edukasyon sa bansa. I am sure he will rise to the challenge, and I'm very excited to work with him in his new capacity as Secretary of the Department of Education. In view of the foregoing, it is with utmost pride that I sponsor this resolution expressing our sincere appreciation to Secretary Sonny Angara for his exemplary service to the Senate and the Filipino people. Maraming salamat po.
Chair thanks Senator Nancy Binay for her remarks. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next to co-sponsor the measure is Senator Grace Poe. I move to recognize the Honorable Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Poe is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Tayo pa rin. Mr. President, nabanggit na lahat ng mga nakamit ng ating malapit na kaibigan at kasama dito sa Senado. Of course, Senator Angara's appointment as the Department of Education Secretary is the result of his extensive and impressive work as a legislator for almost 2 decades. An avalanche of support for his appointment came when it was announced. We were happy and sad at the same time, but we could see that from the private sector, from the public sector, everyone was in agreement that he was the right man for the job. Isa sa pinakamahalagang papel na ginampanan niya sa Senado, and I know we can all agree with this, is his chairmanship of the Finance Committee. pwede ko namang sabihin, he scrutinized the budget well, which is true, and in my opinion, he was fair. He fought for our advocacies. But what's important to me, really, is the personality and the character of a person. Nabanggit na nga lahat ng mga nagawa niya, EDCOM, yung mga education, laws, etc. But for me, what really stood out is his character. He's a very kind person, very patient, and most importantly, very humble. Alam mo, yung mga iba, pag nahawakan ng isang posisyon na napakahalaga, kung umasta, iba na. Senator Angara, pumapasok yan dito na naka-plastic envelope. Hindi ko makakalimutan. Lahat ng mga files niya. Na niragaluhan ko na nga ng leather folder. Ginamit ng 1 linggo. Ako'y nagpasalamat. Pero bumalik uli sa plastic envelope because it's practical. And kahit hindi naman pinaplano, nagkakataon na palagi kami nagkakasama nung 2013 pa sa mga lakad namin. At ang mga natutunan ko sa kanya, mabait siya, wag mo lang gutumin. Pag gutom, napakasungit na. At ang hindi ko rin makalimutan, matipid. Kasi kahit na nag-iikot kami, magkasundo kami basta outlet lang kami pwedeng mamili. I mean, for me, I really value those things because, as public servants, of course, we also want to splurge for our family, but it's always within reason with Senator Angara. But he also knows how to reward us when we accomplish a job or a task. Hindi naman siya matipid sa pagkain. So maraming salamat. Isa siya sa masasabi ko, he is the Senate's proper gentleman. As it was narrated, he finished from Xavier. Of course, I'm very biased because my husband is from Xavier too, and then my kinakapatid here is from Xavier and many others. Even the son of our Senate President and our past Senate President are from Xavier. So it's a very good school, but aside from that, he also finished in UP, and then he also had the opportunity to study in the UK for his formative high school years. Am I correct? Finishing school? And then LSE and then Harvard. So, ang dami niyang ganon. So, he's a proper gentleman, but he can be also the most Kanto boy bully. He has the most scathing remarks, Mr. President, that gets him in trouble. But because of his charisma, he always gets away with it. Mr. President, I think it is not hard for us to agree that among all of us here today, Senator Angara is the most acceptable across all administrations. He is the favorite. They see in him somebody who can cooperate and at the same time contribute valuable insights. So, from the past administration, from the Pinoy administration to the Duterte administration to the current administration, they all trust Senator Angara, and again, for good reason. I'm very proud to also acknowledge, I think that this should always be done whenever any of us here receive recognition, that the ones behind us and beside us is our spouse. And so I'd also like to give recognition to Tutsi, because I think without Tutsi to smoothen things behind the scenes, I think that Senator Angara wouldn't really be as who he is today. So I would also like to thank you personally for being the first to throw your support behind my appointment as chair of the Committee on Finance. I know I have big shoes to fill. I hope I can also perform as well as you did. You were endorsed by FPJ the first time you ran. And this is one of the times where I felt that my dad made the right choice. Of course, also with Senator Cheese, but iba naman yan. Pero Hindi, no, I'm proud also that my dad endorsed Senator Cheese. What I'm saying is, no, iba naman kasi Senator Cheese has always been identified with FPJ. But Senator Angara, even if people may not know it, my dad was proud to endorse you. And I'd like to thank you that every single year, you always sent flowers for my dad. And you know what? I didn't even know until the last time because you usually send a simple arrangement. Sorry, hindi napansin. Kasi palaging nandun sa, natatakpan ng mga iba. And nagkataon, nung pumunta ako, napansin ko this time because it was, I guess, one of those times na wala masyado nakapagpadala sa mom ko kasi birthday. Nakita ko yung sayo and they told me that you always send. So matipid talaga si Senator Angara pero hindi nakakalimot. So with that, Mr. President, I would like to say we will certainly miss you here, but as everyone has said, the country needs you in this capacity as Education Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair thanks Senator Poe. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Lauren Legarda.
Senator Legarda is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, knowing that no one is poised to illuminate paths even more brightly, parting ways turns farewell into celebration. Today, we honor a man who continues to serve our nation with diligence and passion, Secretary Juan Edgardo Sonny Angara. His career stands as a testament to what can be achieved when intellect, hard work, and service come together. From the moment he stepped into the halls of the Senate in 2013, Secretary Sonny has been an architect of progress, with an ear always tuned to the people's struggles and a heart committed to finding solutions. Secretary Sonny listened, studied, and dedicated his abilities fully to meaningful, useful legislation. As chair of the Committee on Finance, a role I previously held and understand deeply the challenges it entails, he ensured that our nation's budget met the urgent needs of our people, including navigating us through the unprecedented trials of the COVID-19 pandemic. At that crucial time, he sponsored the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act and the COVID-19 Vaccination Program Act of 2021. Laws crafted with urgency, but meticulous care that served as lifelines for millions of Filipinos. I mention this because, truthfully, while we can highlight the more than 340 laws that Sonny has sponsored and authored across various advocacies, his legacy transcends mere numbers. Sonny's strength lies in his wisdom and understanding that his appointment to the Department of Education is not about what he has done, even his educational and familial attainment or his background, but what he is expected to do, and much to do. It is about the gravity and seriousness of the challenge we collectively face. It is about our shared responsibility in government to ensure that every Filipino child can dream ambitiously and have the tools and the opportunities to pursue those dreams. Secretary Sonny's forthcoming role is demanding, but he is fully prepared to address the significant responsibility with resolve. And I am confident that Secretary Sonny's dedication in the Senate will mirror his work in DepEd, perhaps even far greater, bigger, and better, always striving for excellence, pushing boundaries. His vision, competence, integrity, and efficiency will undoubtedly drive meaningful reforms in our education system. Sonny, your colleagues in the Senate will miss your eloquence, sharp mind, hard work you made appear effortless. I will miss your being funny. I will miss your sometimes making fun of your tita, but I've forgiven you for that even before, but you never apologized. So, your contributions have strengthened this institution. And as you embark on this new journey, we stand with you, ready to work together for the welfare of our learners, our teachers, and the entire nation. We deeply, sincerely appreciate your service to the Senate and your service to the nation as a new DepEd Secretary. Thank you.
Chair thanks. Senator Legarda, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure, I move that you recognize Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
Senator Ejercito is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, it is my distinct honor and privilege to co-sponsor proposed Senate Resolution number 1070, expressing our deep and abiding appreciation to one of our own, Senator Juan Edgardo Manalang Angara, more affectionately known as Sonny, for his exemplary service to the institution and to the Filipino people as a senator of our republic. Mr. President, I would have to admit that today is a bittersweet moment for this representation. While I am beaming with immense pride and joy for Senator Angara's new task as the new Secretary of Education, I am also sad to see him depart from the halls of our beloved Senate before we end the 19th Congress. More than 11 years have passed since the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Aurora and I were first elected as neophyte senators during the 2013 midterm elections. At the time, Senator Angara and I belonged in separate political camps. He was with the administration Team Pinoy, and I was in the opposition United Nationalist Alliance. But be that as it may, following the Senate's noble tradition of bipartisanship, I am deeply grateful that Senator Sonny and I transcended party lines from the very onset of our terms in this chamber, forging a strong working relationship and, more importantly, a friendship built on shared values and principles. This bond forged in the crucible of often demanding legislative work has made our achievements even more fulfilling. It has truly been an honor to work alongside the gentleman from Aurora over these years. Undoubtedly, the eminent national figure, the late Manong Ed Angara, and the equally remarkable Ma'am Gloria Manalang Angara consider it a profound blessing to have a son like Sonny. As you take on your new responsibility as Secretary of Education, I offer my unwavering support, and we will always remember that in every policy debate, Senator Angara has consistently demonstrated meticulous preparation that has shaped countless pieces of legislative measures that positively impact millions of Filipinos. In closing, Mr. President, dear colleagues, allow me to pay homage to my Severian brother by citing some lines from the hymn of our beloved alma mater. Strength and purity of soul, mind, and body, self-sacrifice, the spirit of charity. These are qualities that you have always so effortlessly embodied in every role that you have undertaken as a public servant. Luchat Lux, my dear friend, my colleague, my brother, my seatmate, always let your light shine to the service of our Filipino people. Always be a man for others. Maraming salamat po and mabuhay.
Chair thanks. Senator Ejercito, Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa. So move, Mr. President.
Senator De La Rosa is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I consider it as a privilege to have been given the opportunity to serve this chamber alongside Senator, now Secretary Sonny Angara. Today, it is my honor to co-sponsor Senate Resolution number 1070, expressing gratitude and commendation to Senator Juan Edgardo Sonny Angara for his invaluable contributions to the Senate and to the nation as a Senator of the Philippines. We have witnessed him carry and take charge of massive responsibilities. I need not think too much for the perfect example. After all, ever since I started out, Senator Sani has been the chair of the Committee on Finance. We are all in awe of how Senator Sani navigated through every line item, every proposal, every amendment, and the thousands of pages of the national budget. Walang tulugan, walang katapusang pag-aaral, at paghahanap ng paraan upang matulungan ang mga pangangailangan. And he never wavered in listening to every earnest proposal. When this representation was given the responsibility to sponsor the budget of the Department of National Defense and other key agencies, Senator Angara stood as a reliable pillar of support. Thank you, Senator Sani, for exposing me to the national budget as one of your vice chairman. At noong tayo naman ang tumayo at nakiusap, nagbakasakali na sana madagdagan ang budget ng Philippine National Police, Bureau of Fire Protection, at Bureau of Jail Management and Penology. Walang ibang tugon si Senator Sani, kundi taos-pusong tulong at suporta. Truly love, in this case, love for country, always finds a way. In addition to the annual General Appropriations Act, as chair of the Committee on Finance, Senator Angara also sponsored the passage of two laws that strike right at the heart of public service. First, Republic Act number 11712, or the Public Health Emergency Benefits and Allowance for Health Workers Act. Sa kasagsagan ng pandemya, tumayo at lumaban si Senator Angara para sa ating mga healthcare workers. Second, is Republic Act number 11696, or the Marawi Seeds Victims Compensation Act. While no one can ever dream to undo the damage dealt by war, we can, nevertheless, give the survivors a fighting chance at rebuilding their lives. And that, Mr. President, was what Senator Sani sought to do and did. Here is a man who has shown himself to be trustworthy, to address the plight of healthcare workers, to help restore lives broken from war, and to plan for the expenditure program of an entire nation. It only stands to reason, therefore, that he too is surely to be trusted with our children and grandchildren in their education. It is my honor then to express my appreciation and support for Secretary Sani for who he is as a man. I do so wholeheartedly, no questions, no reservations, and definitely no amendments, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po.
Chair would like to thank Senator De La Rosa, Majority Floor Leader. Any other co-sponsors?
Thank you, Mr. President. Next to co-sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Raffy Tulfo. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Tulfo is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would like to associate myself and be made co-sponsor of the said resolution commending our colleague, Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara, for his invaluable contribution to the Senate and the Filipino people as a senator, a lawyer, and public servant in general. His more than 20 years in public service, both from the upper and lower chambers of Congress, deserves proper recognition, for he made a significant impact in passing various laws that affect changes in the lives of our countrymen. Nung mabalitaan ko po una na si Senator Angara ay in-appoint bilang DepEd Secretary, labis po ang aking tuwa sa totoo lang. Dahil having worked with him here in the Senate for 2 years, I saw a colleague who's not only a good listener, but also a good implementer. Kaya sabi ko, well then, ito na yung tao na mapapakinggan niya yung samot-saring problema sa ating public, elementary and high school at mag-implement siya ng mga solusyon na yon. That's why I talked to him a few days ago. At sinabi ko sa kanya, yung problema, yung walang kamatayang kontribusyon para sa electric fan, para sa jobos, para sa floor wax, pambayad sa janitor, pambayad dito, left and right. Anong nangyari sa MOOE? Hindi siguro nakakarating. Kaya ang nangyari, kinakarga sa mga estudyante. At ang sagot po ni Senator Angara, no problem, ayusin natin yung problemang yan. Ngayon pa lamang, Secretary Angara, nagpapasalamat ako sa iyo dahil siguro under your watch, totally mawawala itong mga problemang ito dahil sa kalaman po ng marami dyan sa DepEd, yung mga estudyanteng nag-aaral sa public school, karamihan sa kanila yung mga anak ng mga taxi driver, anak ng mga tricycle driver, vendor, security guard, anak ng mga pobre na naglalakad papuntang eskwelahan dahil walang pamasahe. Butas-butas ang damit. Kuminsan wala pang tsinelas, and yet pagdating sa eskwelahan, obligahin na mag-contribute para sa electric fan. And that's not gonna happen under the watch of Senator and Secretary now, Angara. Sir, thank you in advance, Senator, Secretary.
Chair thanks Senator Tulfo for his remarks.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Robin Hood Padilla. So move, Mr. President.
Senator Padilla is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa atin pong pinunong mayorya, at sa lahat po ng bumubuo ng lupon na ito. Nais ko pong ipahayag ang aking umaatikobong intensyon upang maging kabilang sa mga kapwa-sponsor ng resolusyon bilang 1070 na pinungunahan po ni Lakan Senador Juan Miguel Zubiri. Ang pagbibigay po ng pagkilala at parangal kay Senador Juan Edgardo Sani Angara. Sir, alam niyo po, ang akin pong pagtindig dito kasama po ang lupon ng mga Muslim at ng mga katutubo. Sapagkat sa inyo po ay naging batas po ang Integrated History Act na nagbigay po ng daan sa integrasyon ng kasaysayan, kultura at pagkilanlan ng mga Filipino Muslim at mga katutubo sa pag-aaral ng ating mga kabataan. Napakahalaga po nito sapagkat dito po namin nakikita ang nararamdaman po naming problema na ang hindi po pagkilala sa kasaysayan po ng mga katutubo at ng mga kamusliman, ito po ay pinagmumulan ng mga alingasngas. At ito rin pong ginawa po ninyong Tatak Pinoy Act. Ito po ang katulad po ng kasuotan ko na kayo po ang nagbigay ng kahalagahan sa mga gawa ng mga katutubo at ng ating mga kababayan. At inyo rin pong ginawa yung pong bill na SBN 1616. Ito po yung pagbibigay pagkilala kay Sheikh Makdum. Siya po ang nagdala ng Islam sa Pilipinas at ito po ay napakalaki pong hudyat sa amin ang binibigay niyo pong atensyon. At ito pa pong isa, yung binanggat po ni Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, yung Marawi Compensation Act. Maraming salamat po at alam po namin, mahal na kalihim, sa inyo po ay makikita po namin ang kagandahan ng muli ng Madaris Curriculum Program. Ito po ang solusyon natin sa terorismo. At hinihingi po namin na mahal naming kalihim na bibigyan niyo po kami. Alam po namin na kayo po ang magbibigay sa amin muli ng pag-asa dito. Muli po, maraming salamat po. Mabuhay po kayo, mahal naming kalihim.
Chair thanks Senator Padilla for his remarks. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Lawrence Christopher Bongo. So move, Mr. President.
Senator Go is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, it is with great honor to recognize and commend a distinguished public servant who has devoted his career to the betterment of our nation, Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara. Boss, salamat. Sa loob ng kanyang termino sa Senado, si Senator Sani ay nagbigay ng malaking kontribusyon sa ating bansa. Hindi maikakaila ang kanyang dedikasyon at pagsusumikap na magbigay ng makabuluhang pagbabago sa ating lipunan. Among his many achievements, Senator Angara has been a driving force behind significant legislative measures. He played a crucial role in the enactment of the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, which has provided millions of Filipino students with the opportunity to pursue higher education without the burden of tuition fees. This landmark legislation is a testament to his unwavering commitment to educational reform and the empowerment of our youth. As chairman of the Committee on Health and Sports, nagpapasalamat po ako sa kanyang suporta sa mahalagang legislation at budget para sa kalusugan at sports. For the information of the public, si Senator Sani ang kinikilala naming sa Senado na aming finance guro. His dedication to fiscal responsibility is equally commendable. He has championed reforms that aim to improve government transparency and accountability, ensuring that public funds are used effectively and efficiently for the benefit of our people. His leadership in crafting policies that promote economic growth and infrastructure development has laid a solid foundation for sustainable progress. Ang mga nabanggit ko po ay ilan lamang po sa dami ng kanyang nagawa para sa ating bayan. Sa loob po ng mahigit 11 years, ang dami na po niyang nagawa. Ang kanyang serbisyo at pangako sa bayan ay nagbibigay inspirasyon sa lahat ng Pilipino. Ang kanyang leadership, integridad at malasakit sa kapwa ay tunay na dapat ipagmalaki. As we honor Senator Sani Angara today, let us express our deepest gratitude for his tireless efforts and unwavering dedication. His contributions to our Senate and to the nation are truly remarkable, and his legacy will undoubtedly continue to inspire future generation of leaders. At sa aming Mythical 5 ng UNTB, Senate Sentinels, good luck po sa iyong bagong trabaho bilang DepEd Secretary. Salamat sa paggabay sa akin dito bilang iyong kuya kita rito. Salamat sa lahat po. Congratulations and good luck sa ating DepEd Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Go. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada. So move, Mr. President.
Senator Estrada is recognized. You may
Thank you,
proceed,
Mr.
sir.
President. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I rise today to manifest my full support for the adoption of proposed Senate Resolution number 1070, expressing gratitude and commendation to Senator Juan Edgardo Sani Angara for his invaluable contributions to the Senate and to the nation as a Senator of the Republic of the Philippines. We are very grateful for having the opportunity to work closely with one of our esteemed colleagues, especially during the budget season last year, where I was among the subcommittee chairs of the Finance Committee. As chairperson of the Senate Finance Committee for several years, he steered the passage of the national government's spending plans, which primarily focused on allocations for the most vulnerable sectors. Mr. President, among the most notable legislation he passed or authored or co-authored include the Free Kindergarten Law, the Universal Health Care Act, the Expanded Public Employment Service Office Act, the Expanded Senior Citizens Act, the National Athletes and Coaches Benefits and Incentives Act, and the National Sports Academy Act, to name a few. His push for the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act paved the way for tuition and other fees to be free in state universities and colleges, and provided a big boost to expanding access to majority of our Filipino youth, especially the underprivileged. Nagpapasalamat din po ako kay Senator Angara bilang katuwang para may sakatuparan ang pagsasabatas ng mas mataas na disability pension ng ating mga veteranong sundalo. Inabot ng 3 dekada bago na amyendahan ang Republic Act 6948 na isinulong ng aming mga ama noong 8th Congress, si dating Pangulong Joseph Estrada at ang kanyang butihing ama na si Senator Ed Angara. Beyond his legislative accomplishments, Senator Angara's humility, dedication, and hard work earned him the respect and admiration not just from his colleagues in this august chamber, but also from his constituents. With his impressive record as a champion of policy and legislation on education in his almost 2 decades of being a lawmaker, there is no doubt that Senator Angara will do a great job at the Department of Education for the general welfare of Filipino school children who are the future of this nation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair thanks Senator Estrada for his remarks. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Amy Marcos, I was informed, would like to have her speech inserted into the records, Mr. President. Mr. President, no other...
So entered into the records.
Mr. President, before we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 1070, I move to suspend the rules of the Senate to permit our colleague...
Prior to that, with the permission of the Majority
Yes.
Floor Leader, it is the intent of the Chair instead to suspend the rules, to simply suspend session to allow Senator Angara to deliver his response, and upon resuming again, may I request the Majority Leader to move to spread into the records the remarks delivered by Senator Angara during the interregnum while session was suspended. But before that, Majority Floor Leader, no one, I guess, here is more proud than Secretary Angara, your former teacher, your former colleague, your in the House, and your former colleague as well here in the Senate. And we, all of your colleagues here in the Senate, your co-workers here in the Senate, we are sure that you will make us even more proud as you wear another hat in the Executive Department as the new Secretary of Basic Education. Again, to afford Senator Angara to deliver his response within the hearing distance of everyone here in the Senate as well as your colleagues. Session is suspended to allow Senator Angara to give his remarks.